Go ahead. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our meeting. I apologize for, I think it was last week that we couldn't make a quorum. Annette, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. But I've talked to the guilty parties, and it won't happen again. But thank you all, and we'll start off with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started on the public comment, I want to welcome Mr. Bañales.
Thank you.
We've been looking forward to having you join us, and finally we have an interim director. And I talked to Jesus, and the great feeling that they have that now we have. We're still county employees,
sure,
but now they focus entirely on ETA.
Yes.
So am I the first guy to say ETA?
I think you are. So you get the
El Paso Transportation Authority. So it's good to hear.
Very good.
Mr. Bañales, I'll give you the floor.
Well, I have a report. I can do it during the time of the report. Okay. That's okay.
What part of the agenda is that on?
It would be I.
I?
Yes.
5I?
Yes, sir.
I can move it up if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah, can we move that up?
Sure. Yeah, there's no problem with that.
So,
I'll read it up. Okay, so 5I is to receive a report from the Interim Director of Transit Operations regarding operational, financial, and other relevant activities for the month. And this will be presented by Javier Bañales.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner and members of the board. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I really do appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the relationship working with you all. The title has interim. I don't know whether that's 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months, but however long it is, I'll certainly give it my full 100% attention. So again, I wanted to thank you all. Well, I just completed 2 weeks with the county, extensive orientations, understanding all the dynamics within the county. One of the first things that has happened is that the transit services has moved from the 2nd floor to the 4th floor in the building, the MDR building. And of course, when office moves occur, it's because of more space, location, and everything, but it's also disruptive, as you can imagine. So we still have boxes on the floor. Just yesterday, I was able to get the final connections with the internet, with my computer that I had. So I was using my personal computer pretty much until just recently. So I've been going through that transition. I participated in about 12 to 14 virtual meetings with different departments, different programs, some community service agencies, and of course reading a lot of the historical data that's available all the way from the last 10 to 12 to 15 years. Because again, as part of my background, I started with Amistad in 2004, and since Amistad at that point in time had the contract to provide the fixed route services for the county, so I had an understanding and a knowledge of the fixed route transit program. And even after First Transit came in and became the vendor, I was still involved because of the regional planning committee that was established in 2006 through TxDOT, because there's about 24 regional planning committees throughout the state. And so in that area agency on aging, an agency that is overseen by the COG, the Council of Governments, and Amistad, we were the 3 agencies that were involved in establishing the regional planning committee and the group, developing the bylaws, meetings, procedures, and all that. And then, of course, that included working with bringing in the various transportation service agencies, social service agencies. So Metro was very much involved also from the early period. During the different history of the Regional Planning Committee, both the County of El Paso as well as Sun Metro have shared the committee at different times. And so there's a history there also of their participation and being involved in coordinating, planning, and working together to move people, which is what the purpose for transportation services is, of course. I wanted to share with you a quick overview kind of like a 30,000 foot overview of the work that's being done right now by the EPADs. First of all, there's a lot of contracts, there's a lot of reports that have to be prepared to the different funding sources. I think all of you involved in various governmental work know FDA, TxDOT, different funding sources that require transport program reports. You're familiar, we've heard of some of the programs that the County of El Paso has, but I want to give you, again, a quick overview. You've heard, I'm sure, of the van pool program that we have. It's been established about 12, 14 years ago, at least. That's as far back as I can remember when Bob Geyer, who used to have transportation, was developing the proposal, presented it at the Regional Planning Committee. And of course, the Regional Planning Committee gave support towards proceeding with that funding request through TxDOT. And that resulted in a very robust van pool program. In fact, we were in a conversation with TxDOT just yesterday, and they're taking it's so well established now that TxDOT is taking that model and sharing it and applying it with other parts of Texas. We have the subcontractor is the enterprise. So it's coordinated through enterprise. We have 143 vans that are out there that are providing transportation to individuals who work not just for the county or the city, but for public businesses. And so whether they're going here within the county, whether they're going to Amazon, they work at Amazon, or they work in one of the border patrol stations, whether it's in Sierra Blanca or going up to Deming. Some of them, not just government employees, but the public. There's 143 vans that are being used. On an average, between 200 and 300 individuals are using the services of the van pool program. And of course, they pay a little bit, but it saves them in fuel. And when we think of the number of vehicles that are not on the highways or the freeways, clogging the freeways and polluting the air, that's about 143 fewer. That's actually more than like 200 to 300 fewer vehicles on any given day in our county. And so that reduces traffic. And it also stimulates a little bit of the economy because the dollars that they would have been spending, they can use it on other things, whether it's food or other expenses. So the van pool program has been a very robust program, and it's been in place for, I want to say, about 12, 13, 14 years. Of course, the El Paso County Transit Facility that's going to be built about the city and the county bordering the far east side is something that, again, has been underway for a number of years. And we're now maybe 2 to 3 years from it becoming a reality. Atkins Engineering is the subcontractor. And of course, right now, we're in the final phases of the land acquisition. Some preliminary designs have been developed or being developed. And then, of course, it's going through the whole process. And I'm sure some of you are familiar, again, coming from local governments, of the time frame that's involved in the planning, environmental impact studies, et cetera, that have to be completed. And of course, the gold route, transportation of individuals from El Paso to Las Cruces and back, it's an express route that takes individuals that work in either city back and forth. So that's provided also another area where through this program we've reduced, again, pollution, we've reduced the number of vehicles on the road. We're right in the middle of, Jesus will share a little bit more about this on the bus shelters. We're going to be installing 115 bus shelters throughout the county. 115? 115, yes. And so they vary in size. And again, Jesus' presentation will go a little bit more into detail on that. And we're working with DEC Engineering. And so they're doing some of the work, some of the design. But beyond that, there's also the work with the various communities, because a lot of planning has gone into this as to where exactly it's going to be built, building the location, and taking into account the feedback that we get from the communities out there in the county. Of course, the fixed route program is the one that we're most familiar with. This has been in place for maybe 30, 40 years. Formerly, the subcontractor was First Transit, but the company is now called TransDev. They went through either a transition or maybe just a name change. I really don't know. But we're working with them because we have to monitor their performance, reports that they submit. And in the next few months, we're going to be releasing a major RFP that's called a big RFP, because with Transdev. It's expiring in December of this year, but it's going to be extended to allow us to go through the RFP process and select whether they continue or select another vendor to do the paratransit services for the county. And so the fixed route as well as the paratransit services, because that's going to be integrated into the new proposal that is going to be released. And of course, paratransit, we're starting it now. We've got some startup processes that are underway, marketing, promoting it, getting the word out within the community about the services that are now available. And of course, the website, implementation of the website or expanding the website so that we can get information to the public about the services that we provide. And of course, here we're working with Barracuda, but also in the background is Spectrum, because Spectrum is doing all the background engineering work to make sure that when you click here, the right information pops up. So Barracuda and Spectrum are two of the vendors that we work with very closely. And so all of these and about, there's about 19 grants that are out there that County of El Paso, ETA, is now overseeing or going to be coordinating. And with that comes reports, analysis, all the comprehensive work that is involved in working with the subcontractors. Safety, of course, is critical, working with those that move people, whether it's elderly, person with disability, or even the van program, or the fixed route services. Safety is important, so we have to monitor the safety records and also the preparation, the training programs that these subcontractors have. All of that is part of the complexity that's involved. And of course, all these programs, they don't just happen. Of course, some of the support comes in from the policy highest level. Commissioner Leon, of course, is in his 12th year as commissioner, has seen and been involved in some phase in guiding and supporting, lending his support to this. And of course, Mr. Landeros, in his position, also has been very supportive. All that work that's underway, all that I mentioned, did you know that right now we have two persons that are doing all that work? Of course, and that of course is Reina Mayorga and Jesus Celia.
And they've been with the county. What a job they've done.
They've been, yeah.
It has not gone unnoticed. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's right.
Thank you.
They've been with the county about 7.5 to 8 years. Both of them together came in about más o menos the same time. And so they do all the work that I mentioned, monitoring, working with subcontractors, dealing with land acquisition, dealing with reports, everything that's involved. We've got about $26 million in grants that are either being awarded or in the process of being hopefully awarded. But the $26 million represent dollars that are coming into our area, and certainly they'll turn around here within the community as we hire contractors, as we hire engineering companies or architects, and the different vendors that we work with. So I did want to give a good shout out really to Reina and Jesus, because they've made this a lot easier for me these last 2 weeks, and they're going to continue. Good job. On the agenda today, we're going to be talking a little bit about additional staff, and so I'll leave that for later on discussion, because we really do need that. Like I said, there's only 2 persons. In my end, I'm barely new into this whole process, and so they've been very supportive. Find out where the documentation is for the different programs that we're dealing with. So again, I thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you individually.
Welcome, and that's one of the reasons that this board brought you on board, because of your experience, your people talents that you have.
Thank you.
And I'm, for one, very glad that you're here. And hopefully, for sure, that before you leave today, that all of the board members have your phone number.
Yes, okay.
So any questions that they may have between our meetings, they call you. But I've got to tell you about the van pool. I tried for at least 3 years, maybe 4 years, to have that for our employees here that work out of this building. We offered them so many things, and I think the captain, whoever is in charge of the van, gets an additional 4 hours a week of personal time. They can use it for whatever they want. And I told them, we can call you Captain Supreme Commander, whatever. But that would keep so many cars off the freeway, and we just couldn't make it work.
Really?
I mean, you may try it at the city, Carl. We gave them all sorts of possibilities that they would have, and we just couldn't get any volunteers, not one. So I see those vans everywhere.
Mhm.
So it does work, and it works well.
Well, 143 vans out there.
Thank you, Mr. Bañales, and it's certainly great to have you on board.
Thank you.
So, any questions from the board? And I don't think that's an action item.
No, sir, it's not.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can go back to the consent agenda, but I would ask if we can actually, if it's okay if we pull these items and vote on them separately, because there are some items that need to be corrected, so I just would like that for the record, if that's okay with legal
Sure,
counsel.
absolutely, that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I do think there has to be a motion to pull them out from the consent agenda. So if someone will make the motion to pull items A, B, and C out of the consent agenda and put them in the, and take them up as part of the regular agenda.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I will make a motion to take item 4A, 4B, and 4C from consent and have them heard during the regular agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and we'll have the first item under 4A, and that is approval of the minutes from the meeting on July 17th, 2024. And I believe that Mr. Medina would like to make a notation of correction.
Right. I just wanted to make everyone aware I was there present at the Verizon meeting.
Yes.
Mentally, probably a different thing, but physically I was there.
I will make that correction. And I will also make the correction for Ms. Rodriguez. She was there virtually, and I will confer with legal counsel. There was a few times where we didn't have her on the screen, so we'll decide how to record for that, but I will know that she was there as well.
And I just noticed I was there as well.
See, this is,
That was awesome.
and Harrison was there as well. Okay, so I just did not want anybody to be at this meeting. I apologize. Okay, if there's any other corrections, but I'll make those corrections as noted.
And Annette, who do we have virtually?
Virtually, we do have Jessica Mayu and the town of Anthony, so she's joining us virtually, and there she is. Yes.
Welcome.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Jessica's usually the one who makes the corrections for me, so I'm glad she's not here right now physically, although she probably would say it as well. So thanks, Jessica. Okay, so then we would just need a motion to approve the minutes with the notations for corrections.
Make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, so motion carries.
Great, thank you. The second agenda item under 4B is the approval of the fiscal agent's financial report, and you can see.
But Annette, can we call for public comment? I don't think we did that.
I think you were right, we did not call for public comment. Yes, sir.
Just in case, just for the record.
Yeah, we should. I was under the impression that there wasn't, but you're absolutely right. Let's just get it on the record that we did.
We do not have anyone who signed up for public comment, but if there's anyone here who would like to note anything, no?
We have no takers for public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so then we'll move back to 4B, and that's the financial report. And so the financial report, we're asking to reimburse up to $15,325.93. And those are for services related to communications and legal services. $12,105.93 for Barracuda and $3,220 for Chem Smith.
Do I hear a motion for approval?
I make a motion, Paso.
Do I have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so then we'll move on to 4C. We are requesting for this resolution to be approved and adopted, where you all are recognizing the 88 paratransit plan. In your packet, you do see that the resolution shows a date of approval for August 21st. So just for everyone's information, Mr. Estrada was able to get that corrected before the meeting started. So we do have the resolution with the correct date showing August 27th for approval. So I just wanted to make that item noted as well. And this, in hindsight, we probably should have had this resolution along with the approval of the plan that was approved, I believe, back in was it April? I think it was April. So it was an oversight, but we do need a resolution to be included in the plan for TxDOT's review.
And just for the board's information, I think it was TxDOT who requested the resolution.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So insofar as item C, we do need to take action.
Yes, sir.
So
A motion to approve a resolution of the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation approving and adopting the ADA paratransit plan.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We got a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can get into our regular agenda, 5A. And this is where we are now going to receive updates and reports from El Paso County transit staff regarding ongoing transit projects and other transit matters. We wanted to have this agenda item moved up from where it usually is posted. And the reason why is because we're excited to hear about any updates with regard to the paratransit services. And so Jesus Serna will give this presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair, board members. Jesus Serna, Transit Planner for Paso County. So first off, ETA Access Paratransit Service went live August 1st, 2024, just this month. We do have 4 applications that are under review with our paratransit providers review board, right? They have been sending them to my work email, and I've been forwarding them to the applied access where they need to send them. So there's a little confusion. There's a lot of individuals that I used to deal with in my previous positions in the county. So they know me, they have my contact information, so they're sending it to me because they don't know how to find the new website. So I'm assisting them on that. So I received those emails, and I'm forwarding it to ETA Access and making sure, confirming that they receive it. And I contact the individuals and let them know we received the application and they have been sent. So we're following up on them as well. It's going great. Our transit provider, TransDev, is assisting us. We're also marketing. We don't have any rides right now, but they're actually driving the routes. So our van is out there. People are getting exposed to the van. They can see the marketing, right? We're trying to do our self-marketing. The next update that I have for you will be the passenger shelters. Mr. Bañales talked about 115 passenger shelters countywide. It's supposed to be advertised late September, and then it will be out to bid late October.
And what is the time frame from building 1 to 115?
Oh, you put me
More
on
or
the
less.
spot, Commissioner. More or less, either 180 days or 250 days. I cannot recall the time frame, but I believe it's 6 months for sure. 180 days. Yes, sir.
All of them?
All of them, yeah. There's some in San Elizario, there's some in Anthony, there's some in Horizon City. They're all over our contribution members. So, we're gonna, the bidder, the award bidder, they will have to, coordinate their crew.
Does that include the concrete pad, or are you just swapping out shelters on existing locations?
Good question. So there's 3 types of shelters. We have 3 categories. Category 3 will be just a route post. That's it, with the route name. Category 2 will be a route and then a bench, or the post and the bench, I'm sorry. In category 1, it's the whole shelter, the pad, the bicycle rack, the trash receptacle, and lighting. And those are, I believe those are 35 of those category 1s. And I can do the math on the other ones. But yeah, that's going to be coming forward. So we'll be busy with that.
So 35, that's quite a few.
Yeah, that's quite a few. Yes, sir. Right now we have 11 already existing around the county. Horizon, Amazon was gracious, and they donated 2 of them. So that's the ones that you see in front of Horizon around. They were donation from Amazon. So yeah, and then the other update was Sorry, thank you. The EV pilot program. So El Paso County was selected through Hatch and TxDOT for electric vehicles. So we're still working through that. We're coordinating with Sun Metro because we are going to use the West Side facility to do the housing of our 7 cutaways that they're going to issue us. They're going to give us 7 full cutaway buses, and we're going to put the charging stations there. So right now we're working with the El Paso Electric, with planning, they're planning zoning,
Planning inspections.
planning and inspections department to ease up that process. So
You
that's
know,
what we're-
I went up to Socorro Independent School District where ribbon cutting for their school buses. And I think they were able to put 25 electric buses on the road. They've got their own charging stations. It may behoove you to go take a look at their system. But I've seen them when I pick up my grandson from the grade school that he goes to. I've seen a couple of those electric buses, and they are, I gotta tell you, they look just like any other bus. But they're quieter, and of course, no fumes, and they got the AC going, and you just can't hear anything.
And we were selected the pilot because Route 10 was a good example for that because of the mileage traveled. Right now, they're getting an average of 130 to 140 miles through a full charge. So the pilot program is going to give us 5 regular chargers and 2 fast chargers. And that's what we're working on.
And when do we anticipate receiving?
So that vehicles we're going to receive probably late next year. They had selected a vendor, however, that vendor went bankrupt. So they had to find another vendor.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, it disrupts everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, our goal or their goal is late next year.
And yeah, regarding the time frame, pre-COVID, if a vehicle was ordered in January, you could get it like around October, November, December. Now we're hearing a year and a half from the time that the order is placed, post-COVID.
Wow, this board spoke about electric buses way in the beginning, and it seemed like a pipe dream way in the future, but it's happening.
It's happening. We're getting these for free, so
No match.
No match.
Love to hear that.
I know we're just right now doing the RQs for the chargers, so that's in the process.
And there's still a lot that we still have to learn and experiment and grow because they're not the full answer to transportation services to vehicles. Just like the various industries, they've got pluses and they've got some minuses.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of minuses that we have to work our way through. You know, how long the bus can be operating before you have to charge it, and the length of time that it takes to charge a vehicle, and all of the other ramifications that are involved.
You know, I asked those same questions with Socorro when we were out there, and they've got the same challenges,
Sure.
but they had the way they were staggered and the way the routes that they have. Like I said, it's probably a good idea to go visit them because it seemed like they had their stuff together.
And if I could add one more item regarding the marketing and promotion of the paratransit program, one of the things that we were doing was to have the individuals that are interested in applying for paratransit services to either send an application in by mail or via the internet, which of course for many of them may not be possible. The other was for them to take it to the depot and physically take the application into the depot so that it could be received. But one of the things that we've done really is to touch base with social service agencies and ask them if rather than they taking them to the depot, they could take them to the locations where some of the social service agencies are, for example, where Centro San Vicente on Alameda, and then La Fe. Also, they have a number of clinics, Volar, Center for Independent Living, and Amistad. So 3 of them I haven't finalized with La Fe, but the other 3 have agreed to market and promote the fact that applications can be taken to their facility, and then they'll call us, and then we'll pick it up. So this way they don't have to go all the way to the depot to drop off an application. And Volar has also agreed to assist in the completion of the forms, the application forms, because they could be a little daunting. That's about a 5 or 6 page application. So Volar can help, agree to help in the completion of the forms. And then once they're completed, then they'll notify us, and then us Transdev, and then they'll pick it up to try to expedite the whole process.
It's good to hear.
That was my update. Thank you for that. I think that I have forgotten about that. Thank you. That's all I have. Any questions?
Just quick question. On the bus shelters, are we allowing any type of advertising?
No, we're not. If I get a call that there's anything, I'll go out there and I'll remove it. I'll call the individual to come and remove it. And if they damage it, then we know who damaged it.
Good.
Is that what you meant?
Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Advertising.
Okay. I mean, advertising for your municipalities, I believe we could advertise, but it's like somebody selling a car. No, yeah, remove that. But if you guys need to advertise, like if municipalities are there, I don't see why we can't.
As we complete those, I think you said 3 sections, right? The top notch. Is there going to be like a ribbon cutting for each one of them? I mean, to let the public know that this is going on.
We could work on that. Yeah, we could work. I know we've done the first one that we let the first phase.
Yeah.
We did it at one shelter that included like 6 of them. But I mean, we could do it in each municipality if it's.
That would be nice.
Yeah, right. Okay, we could work on that.
And are we adding trash receptacles next to those?
On some, yes, just on the ones that are category 1s.
Okay.
So the ones that like the one that's in front of Public Works at Horizon, and the one in front of the Walmart on Darrington.
Okay.
Those are the full bid lots. Yeah, those have the receptacles.
What about bicycle racks?
Only on the category 1s, yes, ma'am. Yeah, those have everything. The Cadillac, the shelters.
And they have bicycle racks?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have bicycle racks and trash cans and the display board.
It used to be very popular in some of our shelters, that's why. And we have to put extra ones for the demand.
So they leave the bike there at the shelter? Oh.
They could, but our buses also have that rack in the front that they could take the bikes with them. But in the event that there's no more space for bikes, they could leave it in the shelter.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to note that Susie Rodriguez from Town of Clint is on virtually as well. So she joined us at 2:57.
So remind us to include her in the vote.
Yes, sir. We will do that. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5B. Now this is the update on the service reduction removal policy from TTI. I do believe that we have Michael Walk on the line with us, but Michael, would you like to give an update, or would you like for us to do that?
Sure. This is Michael Walk with TTI. I can give a quick update where things stand on that particular work. As the board is likely aware, we've been working on developing the service reduction and removal policy and are in the middle of the pilot test phase of that particular work, which means we're taking the policy draft and then applying it to the local case of Socorro and what might be an appropriate service change action in the event that Socorro is not a member of EPATS. And that work is underway, and we anticipate coming back to the board in September with the results of that pilot test work. And that would include not only, that would include service changes that would be presented to the board, potential service change options. And so that would be presented to the board, as well as the final policy document for board consideration. All that will be in September.
Any questions? I've got one, Mr. Walk. I know that we've discussed it in the past, but picking up a client in another location other than Socorro, but their final destination is in fact Socorro. I have heard, or I understand, that we are dropping them off there. Is that in the preliminary direction program that we're headed?
There definitely are trips like that today. We have some data that you will see next month on the amount of trips that start, in other entities' jurisdictions and then end in Socorro, or vice versa, right? Somebody that gets picked up in Socorro and is going somewhere else. So you'll see data on that. The service changes that we'll put in front of the board will include a menu of different ways to handle those trips, right? So if in the end there is a recommendation for no service picking up or dropping off in Socorro, then what might be how might you mitigate the impact on the residents of member entities? So those will be some options we'll present to the board in September.
Okay, thank you. And this is for board members. I just don't see how we could or should drop off a rider in Socorro with Socorro not participating in the program, but Carl, you may have other ideas.
Yeah, so we had an opportunity, Anthony DeKaiser, our director, and I met with Mr. Bañales and Jesus last week, and we discussed that extensively. And for TTI's data gathering, I don't know if you're including paratransit in that as well, because we really don't know if Socorro is going to provide that. If they're not using federal funds, it may not be a requirement if they don't have fixed route service, but they may do it voluntarily, which gets us back to the same point, both the city and ETA about connection points and what we call drop and roll, where you're leaving not only regular customers, but also paratransit or ADA customers at locations with no guarantee when that next vehicle is supposed to come and pick them up. So it's the whole transfer thing all over again. And it's going to affect potentially the city and our Mission Valley terminal and any connection points, as TTI was saying about those options as well. So not only do we have to keep an eye on it from the fixed route perspective, but also the paratransit.
And is there a liability involved there?
There's not I mean, as we discussed before, the minimum requirement is that you get them to the next point, the next jurisdictional point. Internally, we agreed that wasn't the best for the customer or the higher standard we wanted to set for the customer. So there's no obligation on Socorro Transit to take them further than their jurisdiction. So this gap of service, potential gap in service, could create the same problem we tried to resolve earlier. It could replicate it, meaning how are we going to handle paratransit and fixed route is fixed route may not be a problem for somebody to transfer to another point. That's probably a little bit less of a concern, but it is an inconvenience.
Yeah, so as we move forward, I guess that's I know that's something that we have to really wrestle with, because Socorro's not participating, and if we turn around and I know we're not picking up there, but if we drop off there, that's half of the service. But then we can't be an ADA rider just stranded there.
So it could provide the necessity, if they're running their own service or contracted out or whatever, that they become a party to the interlocal. Hopefully that will be approved later on this agenda. They might have to become a party for purposes of paratransit services and agree to the same terms and conditions that we have agreed to voluntarily. So we definitely want that. And everyone's paying for their own cost of service. The difference would be if there's somebody who has a ride, a paratransit rider in Socorro who wants to go visit any point in the city. Now they're committing to go from Socorro all the way to that destination point, which could be anywhere in the city or elsewhere in the county, which we as parties understood and accepted that responsibility. But it's a lot different from somebody in Socorro in a small transit service being given a ride from there potentially to the west side of El Paso or to Anthony. So they're going to have to address that separately depending on what services they launch.
Yeah, a lot of pretty serious questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mr. Wack, thank you. Did you have anything else?
Nope, those are my updates.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go into our next agenda item, which is an update on the preliminary FY 2025 contribution amounts for member governments. I'm going to pull the presentation up so you all can be able to view that, and Michael Walk from TTI will be presenting. Just wanted to note that we, as Mr. Bañales mentioned, we were able to speak with 4 out of the 5 entities, and we walked through what some of the reasonings were in terms of the cost for each of the member governments in terms of what their anticipated cost will be for this coming fiscal year. But Michael will give you all a much more in-depth understanding of how it is that we get to these numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and start this slideshow. And so, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Michael Walk with TTI, Texas A&M Transportation Institute. And I'm going to try not to get too in-depth, simply because one, these are preliminary numbers, and two, you've seen something like this presentation a couple times before, but happy to give you a 30,000-foot view and then answer any questions or provide more detail that you may want. Next slide. So the agenda for today is to focus on first an overview of the methodology, then discuss a little bit about the service plan assumptions for FY25, and then apologize for my typo when I submitted this slide deck to you, Annette. Then the next item is to discuss the FY25 preliminary contribution amounts, not FY24, and then end up with discussion and next steps. So we'll start with the methodology. So as a reminder, I wanted to talk through the full methodology, what we normally would do under the circumstance where we're not doing preliminary estimates, where we're doing the final estimates. So again, that methodology starts with, you can click, this has some animation and that, so you'll have to click, yeah, there we go. That starts with the service plan, deciding what services we're going to be operating in FY25, turning that service plan into operational costs based on revenue hours and miles, also factoring in administrative and planning costs and any other costs like facility leasing. Next step is to then turn those costs and then look at the revenue. How are we going to pay for those things? And we would forecast and apply the federal and state revenue from all the grant sources that Mr. Brunelles was talking about in the beginning of his updates, apply those to the costs. And then the next step is to see how much is left over that needs to be shared among members. You can click the button. And so once we know that number, how much cost is left over to be shared among members of EPATS, then we do the final step. You can click the button, which is to allocate that cost to the EPATS members. It's important to note that the cost and the contribution amounts are allocated to members by service type. So we actually allocate fixed route costs and contributions differently than we allocate ADA costs and contributions, because what drives fixed route costs is the level of service directly in the jurisdiction. What drives ADA, right now we don't know how many trips are in each jurisdiction, so we use a proxy, which is just population. And then the admin and planning costs are assigned to jurisdictions based on how much of the fixed route and ADA costs fall within that jurisdiction. And in the end, the county assumes all non-assigned costs. So any cost and contribution that's needed that is not assigned to another EPATS member ends up being part of the county's contribution to EPATS. That is at least past practice up to this point. So that's how we typically do and come up with the contribution amounts for each members. You can click the slide. So in the preliminary methodology, right, the how we deliver the preliminary estimates to the board, you can click. We replaced the last 3 steps, right? So we still did a full service plan for FY25. We still forecasted the cost of the service plan. Then we allocated the cost to each member, just like we normally would, using our cost allocation method. So miles for fixed route and population for ADA. And then we compared the assigned cost for each member to the prior assigned costs. Essentially, we compared the FY24 cost for each member to the FY25 cost for each member and determined the percentage change, right? So if you're taking a single example, if Anthony's a cost, right, for fixed route bus went down by 3%, right, from FY24 to FY25, then their local bus contribution would go down by 3%. And so that was the last step, is figuring out, well, what is the contribution amount going to be? Because we did not have time to figure out the full revenues that are going to be available under the financial plan, when we're producing the preliminary estimates, we had to use this percentage-based method, right? What's the percentage change in cost? And then use that percentage change in cost to calculate the new contribution amount. That's the best we could do for delivering the preliminary estimates. Now, when we do the final draft estimates in September, we're going to use the full traditional methodology. Is there any questions on how this preliminary method is different from the full method?
No questions, Mike.
Hearing none so far. Okay. You can go to the next slide. We wanted to lay out just some of the key notes about the methodology for producing the FY25 estimates. One is just like before the financial plan, we included all of the services in the ETA or El Paso County area, including fixed route, ADA paratransit, and Vanpool, and the gold route. But of course, EPAT's members currently only share in the costs attributable to fixed route and ADA paratransit. The county, excuse me, covers the costs attributable to Vanpool and gold route. In the service plan for FY25, we assumed on the fixed route side that Route 84 would be discontinued at the end of 2024, just based on conversations up to this point. But we did not assume any other changes. So that is, again, just Route 84 being discontinued. And then for ADA paratransit, we assumed that it would be in place for the entirety of the year, right, starting in October and then going through to the end of the fiscal year. On the costs, in the cost methodology, we did attempt to account for the award of the big RFP, right, for the new contractor for ADA paratransit and fixed route and general public demand response, because there are startup costs that will likely be built into the cost structure of that award, and there may be fixed costs. So we made some assumptions about those costs. Starting in January was our assumption when we did these estimates. We could always update that based on a new timeline as to where things stand right now with the big RFP. Because of the uncertainty, we also factored in a 10% contingency for fixed route and ADA paratransit costs starting in January of 2025, because we don't really know what the unit cost, per revenue hour is going to be under the new award. Last couple of notes, the preliminary estimates do not include any capital costs, and we don't anticipate that the final contribution amounts will include any capital costs unless we receive direction from the board today to do that. Obviously, so what that means is that all capital costs like rolling stock, right, vehicles, the shelters, etc., are all being funded by federal grants, state grants, and El Paso County government share, right? So you don't see any of those expenses or the contribution of El Paso County in the numbers that we're looking at today at this point. And I'll reiterate that the results that we sent around are preliminary, and the final draft contribution should be submitted at the September 18th board meeting. Next slide. Go ahead. So now we'll actually look at the preliminary results. Just a couple of key takeaways. The cost of fixed route went down by 7% compared to FY24, and everything you see here as percentage changes are comparing the FY25 preliminary results with the final FY24 results. So fixed route costs down by 7%. That's from discontinuing Route 84. ADA paratransit, it saw a 58% increase in revenue hours compared to FY24. That makes sense because we were running service all year under this particular financial plan, where last financial plan assumed only a partial year. And this financial plan had updated ridership demand that aligned with the ADA paratransit plan, which was adopted by the board. So that resulted in a 58% increase in revenue hours. And of course, the cost then therefore also goes up of ADA paratransit. However, because of the big RFP award pending in FY25, there's more uncertainty and there's likely fixed and startup costs. So you see the cost of ADA paratransit actually ends up being higher, right? It's an 83% increase in cost, even though revenue hours are likely to only go up by 58% based on our forecasts. In the administrative and planning, there was a 60% increase in administrative and planning costs, which is actually wrong. As you see in my bullet point at the bottom of that set, it's really 24%. And that was a mistake on our part that we double counted some costs from El Paso County staff. But even the 24% increase in admin costs, which is about $201,000 more, is mainly from the new executive director position and the supporting positions for EPAT's leadership. There was an increase in the COG administrative fee. We did, just for your reference, include some funding for professional services and studies, and I can give you all those details if you need them. In the end, that means that the total cost of the service is projected to go up by 20% in FY25. And the contribution amounts increase by about 30%. Now, it varies by member because contribution amounts are allocated based on the service each jurisdiction receives, right? So even if the total goes up or down, each member sees slightly different numbers. You can go to the next slide. So these are the preliminary results by jurisdiction. Just to kind of walk through an example, you can see we have the members on the left, and then the middle column, FY 2024 total operational cost forecast. That's based on the cost forecast in the FY 2024 financial plan. Then the preliminary, the next column to the right, the preliminary FY 2025 total operational cost is the results of our operational cost forecasting under this current effort. So like in the case of Anthony, last year, the forecasted cost for service in Anthony was $146,900. The forecasted cost in FY25 in Anthony went up to $188,400, which is a 28% increase. Reminder, that is the cost of the service operating within Anthony, not the contribution amount, right? So always want to make sure that's clear. But so if the cost in Anthony is going up by 28%, we use that 28% then and applied it to last year's contribution of $21,600. We increased $21,600 by 28%, and you get the preliminary contribution amount of $30,100. And that methodology is, of course, replicated across the rest of the members there. You do see that Socorro is still listed there, although with a footnote that they are not participating. So I wanted to call out that the El Paso County contribution amount is actually inaccurate in that under current protocol, El Paso County assumes the contribution amount assigned to any non-participating entity. So really, El Paso County's number would be its contribution shown here plus that assigned to Socorro. I'll pause there because those are the numbers, and there's some other things that I wanted to address in terms of next steps, but I'll pause there and see if there's any other questions.
No, Michael, no questions so far.
Okay. So then you can go to the next slide.
Okay, 1 moment. Okay.
And yeah, one more. So just looking ahead to the September values, right, what I'm calling the final draft contributions, which is essentially these should be the final numbers unless we get additional direction in the September board meeting to tweak this or change that, right? So that's why I'm calling them the final drafts. But those numbers that we see in September and show the board in September may change. And I just want to give a heads up to the board that the cost of service might change. So you might give us direction today to include or exclude certain costs that maybe we didn't think about or you would rather not include in the financial plan in FY 2025. That's one reason the cost in September might change. We're going to be, of course, applying the actual available grant revenue to the financial plan. That's the big item that wasn't done for the preliminary estimates. And so we're going to be working on that, this month and early September in order to really project the fair revenue and then the available federal and state grants. So that might have an impact on the contribution amounts. And of course, the actual contribution amounts themselves, will be impacted by that work. And for instance, do we want to show the Socorro line item or take Socorro out and just assign that cost to the county. Those are some things the board can give us direction on. And if there's direction on capital costs or anything else that we receive from you today, now's the time to get that feedback to us so that we can make sure the September values are as close to what the board wants to include in the financial plan. Next slide, I believe, is just the next steps. So we're working on getting the grant, the available federal and state grant information from the county. We'll work on updating all the cost forecast, revenue forecast, recalculating those contribution amounts and presenting them to the board at the September meeting. And if there's any final adjustments to those contribution amounts, we can then make those changes after the September board meeting as requested by the board. And that is it. Questions or discussion? Yep.
Michael, I do have a question. Insofar as Socorro's non-participation and the costs that are going to be borne by the county, I'd like to see it on the, on our report.
Okay, not a problem.
I think that's all your questions. Michael, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Right, let me go ahead and get to the other. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5B. And this is discussion and take action and take appropriate action to authorize the LGC chair to execute an agreement with Barracuda PR for the Socorro outreach plan in an amount not to exceed $30,000 after review and approval by legal counsel. Just to note, the county transit staff did meet with Barracuda as well as TTI to discuss what that outreach plan can look like, how many potential meetings there are. So I think it's a bit more fleshed out than what was initially discussed at the last meeting. But we have not had an opportunity to take this type of action to assign the work with the additional dollar amount that's included in that, because it'd be outside of the current scope of work that Barracuda has with LGC.
So we'll have to wait until next meeting to get better numbers.
Well, no, we're at this point, we don't have time to wait. So that's why we have it on the agenda short of the actual scope of work outlined, because they're further along with that information now. But because it's not here, we're wanting to ask for authorization to allow you, the chair, to review that scope of work and have legal counsel approve that final document, but to have a not to exceed amount of $30,000.
Do we have anybody from Barracuda?
Yeah, we do have Dave Acosta with Barracuda, as well as Nicole Ruiz as on the line also.
Yes.
But you can give us an update on what that outreach is looking like so far?
Yes, so we already have an initial outline that we're reviewing internally right now. We're almost done with that. And then I was going to set up a meeting soon with the same people who we had in our preliminary meeting to discuss it just before we present that to the board. But currently right now, from what we discussed in our last meeting was that what's mostly needed is public outreach, because any public comment should be directed toward the city of Socorro. So in that outreach, what we want to do is go kind of above and beyond what's necessary to let the community know, not only the community in Socorro, but the community throughout the county who might be affected by, whose routes might be affected by the elimination of the Socorro route. So that would include marketing from traditional radio, TV, possibly, ads, even so far as going to post in the classified ads, social media, and then of course traditional PR, trying to get the word out on TV news, just get out as much as possible. And then also print materials to be posted in the buses, at the bus stops, along the route, given to other members of the community who might have contact with the communities that are affected. Just basically go above and beyond to let people know that this is happening and that they should contact the city of Socorro if they would like to give them feedback on the elimination of this service.
One of the things that I'm sure the entire board is aware of is by far the Spanish language newscasts are much more popular than the others. Are we also looking at them to get the word out, especially in those areas?
All of the materials would be bilingual.
Okay.
Everything we're talking about here is bilingual.
Okay. Board members?
I just have a question with regard to Route 84. So in the document itself on page 5, number 7E.
Are you thinking of which? I think you might be looking at the interlocal.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
yes,
I sure am.
You're ahead of the game, so thank you.
My mistake. Thank you.
Yes, so I had a question. Part one is if public meetings are still going to be considered in the plan, and if so, Barracuda mentioned the other communities affected that might have ridden Route 84 through Socorro, maybe from San Elizario or Clint. However, there's some flavors in there about how the service reduction is going to be impacted. So if there are public meetings, that messaging in the other communities not only has to mesh, there may be a gap in Socorro, but what alternatives, because they still will be connected. They won't necessarily be passing through Socorro. So if there's information or at a public meeting, we need to make sure there's clarification made so that the public in the other communities doesn't get confused, because they may not be passing through Socorro, but what other options is ETA providing for them, so the messaging gets a little more nuanced in the other communities. So I think that's important to consider now.
Yes, and that's part of the guidance that we were given by TTI as well. The new plan, the plan that we've constructed does not include public meetings, again because of the guidance that in part because of the guidance that TTI gave us as far as the necessity of meetings. But it will be a very nuanced message depending on which segment we're messaging to, whether it's somebody in San Elizario or somebody who's actually in Socorro.
I think also that the social service agencies there, La Fe, Centro San Vicente, are good locations to put signage, because a lot of the individuals that go there are individuals that live in the community. And so that's a good location to have poster signs saying announcement effective so-and-so, service in Socorro, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure that they will be very supportive in doing that because it affects them as well.
Yeah, sure does. Now that you say that, I know that UMC also has clinics in Isleta, Phoenix, and maybe we also include them.
Yes.
Yes, we're trying to be as robust with the outreach as possible. Anywhere and any place that we think that we can reach people who might use the service or might know somebody who uses the service, that's where we want to go.
And so our time frame to do this is ASAP type of basis.
Yeah, because we're already almost in the beginning of September.
Correct. So, Sheriff, if I may, we as legal, we're asking for the board to approve this contract, but the contract hasn't been drafted yet. You all haven't reviewed it, so that's why it's important for us to put a cap there, so that whatever authority the board gives us, it's clear that whatever we do, we're not going to go above that amount. But I'd like to take this moment to remind staff that in order for me to put the contract together, I rely on your scope of work and services. So make sure that whenever you put that together, that whatever it is that you're expecting from Barracuda, in exchange for those $30,000, that be part of the scope of work, and that it be clearly, drafted. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to call me. But the scope of work should really lay out what we're expecting from Barracuda. I know as of right now, it's not entirely clear what we want from them because, as they just mentioned, they're still kind of getting direction from TTI. That's the first point. The second point, I'm not sure who from EPATS is going to be reviewing or authorizing the marketing and the literature that goes out. And it might be staff, Mr. Banuelos, but I just want to remind everyone that if it's going out branded, EPATS, and even ETA or county, we need to make sure that whatever is printed, whatever information is put out into the community is 100% factual and accurate. So, and I know that you all are going to do that, but just a reminder from legal counsel that's of critical importance to me, that whatever we say is being put out into the community on behalf of EPATS, that it be accurate information.
Thank you very much. Noted. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? So the motion. Can you read that item?
Yes, Chair, I can. Action to approve and authorize the LGC chair to execute an agreement with Barracuda PR for the Socorro Outreach Plan, an amount not to exceed $30,000 after review and approval by legal counsel.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 5E. This is to discuss and take appropriate action on the interlocal agreement for the provision of transit operation services by and between El Paso County, City of El Paso, Sun Metro, and the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation for the coordination and operation of 88 complementary care transit services. And on this agenda item, it's been a long time coming. That's what Carl and I were discussing. This has been initiated since March. So we do have El Paso County has signed off, and I do believe that El Paso has as well, City of El Paso. So the LGC is the last.
We'll be the last.
You'll be the last. We're second to last, yes. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that. I know Carl was part of the discussion. Mr. Estrada was on here as well. And I know that Mike had a question.
Yes.
Yes, I'm confident.
So in item number 7E, I guess the question that I have is that it's my understanding, 5 of 11, 7E. So just for clarification, it's my understanding that Route 84 will be terminated at the end of this year. So the question is that with the paratransit coming into play, just so that I understand, is that normally when you have a fixed route, the paratransit comes along with it. So for purposes of us here making the decision is that as we move away from Route 84, will it be a fixed route coming from that route that we're eliminating?
So it's kind of layered here. So we in practice are already implementing this between the two agencies, and since I don't think any customers have been finalized yet, right? So there haven't been any rides yet. So that's kind of been a nice little blessing in disguise. But once this is ratified after the city approves it, we're basically memorializing what we're doing now. But there is the provision so that when Route 84 discontinues, the county is accepting responsibility for its service area. So depending what comes out of TTI's recommendations and what the board decides to do as to how Socorro is being treated. So if you still have a route that passes through there without any stops, I guess that's a little legal shade that has to be discussed. Or if we go around it or just maintain existing routes, you're only committing to paratransit, or EPATS is only committing to the paratransit according to its routes and its service area. At that point, like I said earlier, if Socorro does have some version of paratransit, then we'd want to have them come to the table and become a party to this agreement. So a lot of it still depends on what the recommendations are, what the county, what ETA Transit decides to do with its routes as those recommendations are approved, as to how the paratransit is going to be handled. But what the agreement says is that each party is responsible for transporting its residents in their service area, regardless of where their destination is. So the final shape of things to come will determine that responsibility. I guess I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
And something that I think is appropriate for me to mention at this point, Sergio, stop me if you think it's inappropriate. I had lunch. Stop. As soon as you said lunch, that's enough. Yes. I had lunch with Commissioner Holguin and Jose Landeros and Representative Cruz from Socorro about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. The discussion, of course, was the status of Socorro. And during the lunch, Mr. Cruz, I'll just make a long story short, said that it was a mistake for Socorro to opt out, and he was going to do everything he could to try to get Socorro back on track and join the LGC. I said, well, great. Hopefully, and like I said, and I've said it in writing also, the door has always been open. It will remain open for Socorro to join us. But then in a news conference that Mr. Cruz had maybe 2 days after, maybe 1 day afterwards, he said the total opposite, that Socorro was in the direction to create their own bus service, and that it was the way to go in the future. So I was very confused, and I put out a press release to that effect. But I thought it important to let you all know that I had, in fact, had a meeting with him, and that's what was said, and that's what he said on a news conference a couple of days later. So just a note for the board.
So if I might just add, so here, let's just say, as the Commissioner made the statement here about Socorro, is that they come in with an intra-service fixed route, then they would be obligated to provide the paratransit.
Well, so again, there's legal shades to this, but in broad strokes, it depends on their source of funding. So once they start receiving federal funding, that's when all of these, what you might call heavy, the civil rights types agreements become in force. Secondly, it's doubtful they would have what's called a fixed route, just because of the nature of their community. It could be a dial-a-ride or an on-demand type service. It could be a commuter service. So we don't, I mean, there's so many shades to this. In a meeting we had with them, we emphasized the importance of their funding source largely dictates what type of service and what requirements they're going to have to meet. I think it's unlikely, based on what we know about the circumstances, that a required paratransit would fall on them. Not to say it couldn't happen, but it's at this point, at least in the near future. That said, I can't imagine that they wouldn't have at least an ADA type of provision going on. So it's really trying to peer ahead through the fog. But we've had a meeting with them and expressed a lot of this informational interchange. So they're fully aware of what the menu of options and possible responsibilities are.
And Carl, from what I understand, they will be competing for the same funds that we will be competing for.
Correct, and short of what they budget internally or some competitive grants, they might be, like you said, competing against other entities for the same, slice of the pie, trying to become a subrecipient of tech stuff or rural federal funds. I mean, that's where the real funding comes for them. Or are they going to try and go urban at 5307, which, it's just a long process. I mean, this process can take years to go through, execute, and then even to have access to the money after you've been awarded it can be years, it can be, 2, 4, or 5 years in the future where money's actually available to be spent once you initiate, depending on what path you're taking. So it'd be nice to have, even if there wasn't a permanent membership, an interim path to try to get to a bridge to somewhere. I don't know that that's ever been discussed, but I think it'd be preferable to a clean break, but powers higher than us to make those decisions. So,
Mr. Bagnan?
Yes, I was going to say item J actually leads to this as well. Is it okay to bring it up at this point in time?
Let's see. I think so, but let me just double check. Yes, you can incorporate elements of that discussion.
Sure. Let's read it into the record first.
Item 5J is to discuss the City of Socorro's Rio Vista Transportation Program application for 5310 funding.
And of course, this has to do with the Regional Planning Committee. This is El Paso Regional Transportation Coordinating Committee. The process for receiving funding through 5310 is the MPO has released an RFP for funding programs providing transportation to elderly and persons with disability. At this last meeting 3 or 4 weeks ago, and this is nothing that's secret or anything because it was released as information. The City of Socorro submitted a summary whereby they're going to be providing transportation within Socorro, and reference was made also outside the City of Socorro. And so they're seeking 5310 funding. The MPO is the entity that is going to be approving the next step as far as funding. And we wanted to touch base with the MPO to make sure that there was understanding of the dynamics in approving some of those funds and the impact that it has on other entities, whether it's the county or Horizon City or others that are in the area, because there's going to, the funding source, whether it's TxDOT or FDA, eventually is going to feel that there's a duplication of services and that we're not coordinated in going after funding for doing very similar things. And so we wanted to share that with the board, because we did communicate with the MPO, just officially letting them know that we're interested in getting a sort of clarification on and making sure that they're aware of the funding implications of the 5310 funding for City of Socorro and how it impacts other entities.
Does that type of funding usually go to jurisdictions that are jointly working with other jurisdictions or solo?
It could go either way. It depends on the program itself and the dynamics of what they're interested in doing. It could be the entity that is just going to provide services within their area. But here in the county, I mean, there's so much interplay between the transportation services within and outside City of Socorro that, we're having some questions as to how it's going to impact, which is the same thing that Carlos made reference to. Some kind of a sit down needs to happen along the way, because it's going to be forced upon by, TxDOT or FDA.
So, Mr. Baggins, I guess my question is with regard to the MTA 310. Obviously, it's something that comes out of the MPO, right? So they have the call for project. So I guess the question here, if I understand, is that there's a probability that the City of Socorro would be operating 5310 outside Palo.
Possibly, yes.
So with regard to the qualifications in terms of being granted the FTA 5310, do you know exactly what this Rio Vista program would encompass? In other words, is that historically it's a service that's provided to seniors, for example?
They have received 5310 funding before. It's gone through the whole process. And so they do have a history of providing transportation services to elderly and persons with disabilities within their area. They've gotten capital dollars as well as operational dollars to purchase vehicles.
And when you say they, who are you referring to?
Socorro, City of Socorro.
City of Socorro. So this Rio Vista transportation program is an existing program?
Yes. Yes.
Is it like an on-demand service?
They're transporting individuals from their service community centers from one to another, possibly probably even home. It's pretty robust there within the city.
As far as item J, there's no action, is that correct?
Correct.
The
there is action for item E, which is what you all were discussing.
So there's no further discussion. Can we have how the motion would read?
Yes, Chair. A motion to approve, and I'm not sure who we've asked to sign it. You just said.
I think it's there.
A motion to approve and authorize the executive, the board president to sign the interlocal agreement for the provision of transit operation services by and between El Paso County, City of El Paso, Sun Metro, and the El Paso Area Transportation Services Local Government Corporation for the coordination and operation of ADA complementary paratransit services. That's it.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I will make that motion.
A motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. A motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, we'll move on to item 5F. This is to discuss and take appropriate action on creating a fund balance policy. We may be, this is probably premature, but I just wanted to bring this forward to you all for consideration. As Michael was discussing the contribution schedule and all the elements that go into that decision making, we still do have funding that has not been expended from fiscal year 23, and we may still have some funding that's unexpended for 24. So this is a good time to start having a discussion or just thoughts on that. I believe that the TCI did recommend that you all look at the possibility of creating a capital fund, a capital improvements fund. And so perhaps that could be incorporated into this fund policy. And or do you all want to look at the possibility of potentially crediting monies back to the communities who made their contributions? I think that you all are still in your initial stages, so you probably would not want to do that because you're building up the funds for current and future costs. But this is something that we really don't have any direction on what to do. And so just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Well, thank you. And I'll start the conversation off, but just the county of El Paso, we try to have a fund balance between 10 and 15%. We're struggling to stay at 8%, and I'd probably even go further down because of our downturned year that we've had. And the other option, as Annette said, is refunding some of the municipalities some of the money. I don't think that's a good idea, but you all may have different thoughts on which way to go with it. So I guess we're at ground zero on that.
Yes, and perhaps you could provide staff direction on looking at some possible policies to consider. Michael, if there's anything you would want to add to the discussion in terms of the capital improvements, please feel free to do so. I know we had talked about that previously.
Yeah, sure. I think as I believe the capital improvements fund or a capital reserve fund would be, an option for consideration, particularly again because of the amount of capital investment currently underway, right, in the ETA service area, and with the service expansion and buying new vehicles and all of these capital investments that ultimately will need to be rehabilitated or replaced at some point in the future. So there's many different ways that can be done, and so to me, that's just one of the options that I believe should be on the table for discussion as a potential way to use surplus from one year to the next.
And
once you're finished.
I was just going to say that, yeah, if staff can look at maybe a couple of options to present to the board that we can look at, and because they're, not being from an accounting background, I wouldn't be much help.
So just maybe one clarification and then one question. So this policy would only address surplus funds, or would it mandate or recommend maintenance of a reserve or capital fund that's actually funded in the allocations?
Sorry, is that directed to me?
Could be, yeah, sure. I think you're in the best position maybe to answer if that's something you would consider putting on the table.
Right. I mean, from past experience, having an ongoing standard way to develop the capital reserve fund and to maintain it, I would say is an industry best practice. The question of whether the current surplus be used as sort of an influx or a start to the capital reserve fund, could be a discussion. I would recommend that establishing a capital reserve fund be a policy decision, from here, going forward. But it's not directly connected to the surplus discussion.
Okay, so I guess that was my clarification point, because this surplus might be a one-time opportunity that we have to seed that reserve fund, which is really the long-term strategical. A follow-up to that would be if we're maintaining an ongoing capital reserve or whatever we're going to call it fund, would the board authorize that to be in an interest-bearing account to whatever? It can reduce the liquidity, but it could also help gain interest instead of. So if we're planning it, capital projects years in advance, then you can capture some of that interest-bearing in lieu of just having an account that you can just pull money out of right away. So I'd recommend that if we could consider that in the plan as well.
It's a good point. And also, Mr. Bañales and Jesus, I know that our budget office with John and others, I'm sure will give you some guidance.
Okay. We'll come up with options, bring to the board some recommendations.
And perhaps it might be too soon to bring back options for September,
Sure.
but we definitely can have it ready for October,
Sure.
I would think.
Yes.
As long as you don't spend the money first.
Yeah, right.
Yes. You've heard that before.
What kind of balance is there?
I believe that there's like about a little bit under 300,000 from FY23, and in 24 I don't know that number yet because there are more costs in 24 than there were in 23. ETA is going to be they have additional costs now for task order 1 and 2 from TTI, and we have this additional money for Barracuda. So I can get you a clearer picture at the September meeting, but we still will have some reserves. So that's good. Because what happens then is that we start looking at costs and we start thinking, well, maybe we meaning council of governments or maybe staff thinking we can pull from there, but we don't have any direction from the board giving us authorization to do any of them.
But I think it's a good idea that we do think about money-making possibilities instead of just having the money sitting there.
And that's also an excellent source for grant matching, which you're leveraging for 80 to 20%. And that's an excellent use of that fund as well. So whether it's capital or vehicles or whatnot. So.
But I do think that, if I may, the other part to remember also is that we still haven't figured out how the monies will be allocated appropriately per percentage of contribution amount of the communities. And so right now, we're not using those contribution monies exactly the way it was intended based on the service plan. And if I was saying that correctly, Michael, that we still need to get that part fixed as well. So that's a consideration.
He agrees with you.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think, Annette, what you're referring to is the fact that the accounting mechanism or the transactional mechanism to use the contribution amounts from the different members to for the different expenses, all expenses of ETA. Right now, those contributions are only being used to fund administrative costs borne directly by the COG through the contracts with TTI or Barracuda, et cetera. And in the financial plan, it assumes that those local contributions also are used as matching funds to the FTA grants that the county holds. And that currently is not being done.
So so just to make it clear that we have these amounts available mostly because we haven't been able to create that mechanism to ensure that everybody's paying their fair share for these costs.
But, just to make clear, President Bamay, it's not that they're not being used as they were intended for. Okay, so that's not the case. I believe that the agreements that we have EPATs with each of the municipalities, the money is being used as intended for, and that's really what EPATs has an obligation, a contractual and legal obligation to do. This is not really an issue that legal counsel is going to solve for you all or address, but what I do want to make clear to you all, because it's come up in my role as legal counsel, is as of today, when staff net asks, can we, are there any restrictions on the monies that are left over? The answer is no. There isn't. The agreements weren't written in a way where there was some kind of obligation to return the money to the municipalities or to then use excess surplus money. I don't even know that's the correct term, because I don't know if it's excess or surplus. Maybe it just hasn't been used yet. But there are no restrictions. And, for part of my observation to Annette was EPATS is such a young entity that, it should probably focus on building a reserve, for a while before it even contemplates giving money back or creating credits. But that's not a decision for me to make. But it does come into play when we approve contracts. And as you all realize, we're very intertwined with the county, very closely intertwined. The county pays for a lot of the expenditures. But, I think slowly the goal is to have EPATS pay for more and more of its own contracts, and even maybe at some point being the source of the local match for federal projects or even state projects. So you want to be careful about tying your hands too tight or too much at this early stage. At this stage you want flexibility, and I think part of this conversation as to what you do in terms of funds or the fund balance policy, I think part of that presentation to the board needs to be an explanation of what your funding sources are. The only funding that EPATS has is the contributions that it receives from the municipalities that are members. That's the only source of funding that this entity has. County ETA has others, but EPATS does not. And so it's I think important for you all to understand that as you progress in the discussions of what you're going to do with whatever funds you have that are not currently being used. I'm not going to call them excess or surplus yet, because I'm not sure that's accurate.
Unallocated.
There you go.
Boom. Would it be correct to say that the allocation contribution from each community is prescribed? That same allocation formula does not necessarily translate to how it's spent. That's a decision of the full board. So it doesn't have to be spent proportionally in each community, unless that's some policy that we're adopting.
As of right now, it's just as you described it. It's not, limited to whatever the percentage is. But I think there's been some discussion. I don't know how you all are going to do that, but there's been some discussion that there is going to be an effort to try and categorize it for the purposes of grant compliance. Michael, is that right, or am I?
I think the idea was that potentially El Paso County can track what expenses they've been making or what contributions they've been making to the match for these grants that are associated with EPATS, to show that they're coming to that match amount instead of providing the dollars to EPATS and then it's supposed to go back to them in a certain way. And so that, to me, that sounds like that would be the most viable option, but I'm sure that they'll provide me the reasons why that won't be. But that's what I was thinking that we were trying to migrate towards that direction. I see Michael in deep thought though, so maybe not.
No, you're correct. That's my understanding as well.
And as we move forward, and then we may have to set up, board members, a finance committee, our group here, to start formulating some direction.
I was going to ask if I remember we were grading committees. And so I was just going to ask if we had appointed anyone to that.
I believe we have appointed, but I don't have those memorized, and I'll have to go back to my minutes to.
To our finance committee?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
I believe so, or it was going to be the executive committee, but so perhaps I'm obviously premature with having this discussion, but it's a good starting point to know what direction you can give us moving forward. So I think that we can definitely have some more, maybe we can just report an update at the September meeting, but still not be complete, and go with the goal of perhaps October looking at options for you to decide.
I have a question. So those monies will be available if the board decides, can we use those for marketing purposes? Right? Can we use those monies for marketing purposes?
I think at this point, like Sergio said, there's no surplus or fund balance. It's just unallocated at this point. So it's up to the board how they want to spend the money on the marketing. But that would just be, I would assume, something that would come from staff to the board to ask for additional funds for that initiative.
Okay. Now I was thinking marketing, like, you know, our brand, right? Jackets, shirts, whatever. So we could start promoting PTA. And using those funds instead of the county.
Well, and EPAD's having a budget versus the county having a budget, and EPAD's having funding. There's two different things. Yes. So if EPAD's has a budget and one of those things is marketing that's done on behalf of the whole community, then you can come with a budget amendment. How the board decides to fund that is a board decision. But yeah, financial oversight, definitely a #1 priority, or #2 at least.
Okay, so then, so there will be no action on this item. Okay, so then quickly on item 5G, this is to inform the board on the staffing plan for FY 2025. If Mr. Landeros was here, he would have presented this item, but he wanted us to ensure that we informed you that TxDOT has approved for that additional position of an administrative assistant. So that would be an inclusion to the staffing plan. So in addition to the two county staff, meaning Jesus and Reina, your interim director, Mr. Bañales, your incoming director, that hopefully will be hired sometime in the first quarter of the fiscal year. And then we'll also have an additional administrative assistant for that position also. And that kind of goes back to how Michael explained that the administrative costs have increased. That this is one of the reasons why as well, because we have another staff member on them.
And as far as TxDOT, there's additional funding?
Well, they have to get approval to use the current funding that they do have now, just for additional personnel.
Any questions?
Okay. All right, well then this will take us to our last agenda item. This is an update on the Federal Transportation Administration's Helping Obtain Prosperity for Everyone, known as the HOPE Project. And this will be presented by Michael Walk. So let me get this presentation up here.
Before Michael starts, let me introduce the item. Again, Jesus Serna, Paso County Transit Planning. This HOPE grant is issued through FTA, but I believe it's running through some Metro. We're a stakeholder as well. It's a unified fare structure, so it all will be the same structure from Sun Metro, El Paso EPATS, ETA, and South Central. Thank you so much. So it'll be one, any rider, it's going to be the same price throughout the whole. And Mr. Walker is going to elaborate more on that. But we had him present this to you guys because it was.
Now that you say that, I did have one question. I don't know if that's more appropriate for Michael or for you. One of the things that I noticed on the plan is there's no discount for children, for seniors, for military, as compared to some Metro has certain discounts.
Well, I think this, just to add on to what Jesus said and to answer your question, Commissioner, this grant application goes back, I think, to 2019 maybe. It was awarded just prior to COVID. COVID put a damper on progressing it. So we're looking at a proposal that was put forth probably 5 years ago now. So the lag has been significant. It was originally proposed as a regional fare, meaning one fare could be collected if someone went to buy a ticket and they could ride throughout the transit system. So a portion of that fare would go to Sun Metro, a portion of that fare would go to EPATS, a portion of that fare might go to SCRTD for each ticket sold. So I think that was kind of the overarching thought behind this, almost like a feasibility. And I know we've been working closely with TTI recently on some of the information gathering, which is how people use the system. I'm sure Mike will go into that, but there's a survey asking things about the fare amount, how much they ride, discounts, things like that. So how that would factor in. But correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I think the end goal was to be some sort of proposal. There would be a single fare and how that's shared among the entities, or maybe even no fare. You know, I don't know what that would be, but I think that gives a little more context to whatever Michael's going to present.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I apologize that you all have to hear me talk so much today. So again, this is Michael Walk with TTI. My goal with this presentation is to simply bring the EPATS board up to speed on the purpose of the study, the background, what it's found so far, and what's next, particularly because, as Carl mentioned, there is a public engagement effort that's about to begin, and it's important that everyone is aware of what is being asked and discussed. And of course, if you have any comments or questions about the study, I'll do my best to answer them. Next slide. So just some of the key facts about the study. The study is looking at the entire El Paso region, loosely defined as El Paso County, inclusive of the city of El Paso, as well as travel to and from New Mexico in particular. The study is funded by the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, under what's called their Helping Obtain Prosperity for Everyone, or HOPE grant program, which is actually no longer in effect anymore. As Carl mentioned, this grant application was written and submitted pre-COVID, was awarded by the FTA during the COVID period or slightly before COVID sort of hit its full stride. And then there were many delays associated with getting the actual money from the FTA and various other items caused by those complexities. However, Sun Metro and El Paso County are both providing some portion of the funding in addition to the FTA funds. The study is looking at the two core systems being Sun Metro and, of course, El Paso County Services, EPATS, ETA, using all of the different ways to kind of refer to the service. The focus is on the fixed route bus services in the region in particular. And also, in addition to Sun Metro and the ETA, the South Central Regional Transit District, of course, is also part of this study. And in a lot of words, the whole purpose of the study is to conduct this feasibility assessment to look at different alternatives for a unified regional fare system. And the study was funded under a grant program that specifically focused on areas of persistent poverty, which is why you will hear words like for everyone, or, especially for people in poverty. That is what the whole purpose of this grant was, to look at how can we set up a regional fare system that would benefit particularly those people in poverty. If you go to the next slide, I like to just turn those words and turn them into something very simple, which is when you're thinking about the fare structure in the region, how can we design policies and or systems that will support regional or multi-agency transit trips? And there's a few examples just to kind of hypothetically think through this. For example, and you can click, this is, riders we know do transfer between El Paso County ETA services and Sun Metro and back in a day. So we have those trips. Right now, there's no transfer method. There's no regional fare payment. Those riders are paying each agency separately using their separate fare structures. Or next, potential kind of trip, transfers between Sun Metro to or from SCRTD, the South Central Regional Transit District, or even more complex, the last, hypothetical situation, what if a rider is using SCRTD to get to Sun Metro to get to El Paso County /EPAT service? Again, each of these I don't know the extent to which that kind of a trip is happening today. We do know that there are transfers between the EPAT service and Sun Metro on a pretty regular basis. And so this is just hypothetically thinking through these kinds of trips and how could a fare system, what might that fare system look like, or how could it be designed? Next slide. I put this slide together just to kind of illustrate the different fare structures that are in place through these three different providers, Sun Metro, EPATS, and SCRTD. You can see there's different one-way standard fares between the different systems. Each agency allows for intra-agency transfers, right, or transfers within the same agency. So Sun Metro allows, a rider to board a Sun Metro bus and get a transfer for free to another Sun Metro bus. So does EPAT, so does SCRTD. However, none of the agencies at this time allow for any sort of transfer discount or free transfer to other agencies, right? So it is impossible. If you're going to ride Sun Metro, then EPATS or vice versa, the rider has to pay both systems the standard fare. There's differences in the discounted fares for certain groups, which was mentioned previously. And the entities or these transit agencies also have different types of pass products available, daily, weekly, and monthly at Sun Metro, or only monthly available at EPATS and SCRTD. So that's just laying out sort of the differences in the region. You can go to the next slide. The project was divided into 5 tasks. I won't go into the details of each, but started with a needs assessment. Then there was an industry scan as well as some case studies to see how other regions have set up regional fare systems. Then there were an alternatives analysis which looked at and recommended different fare alternatives to see which ones might be the most feasible. Then task 4 is the public feedback on those concepts. And then task 5 will be the guidance and implementation documentation. Again, as Carl referred to, sort of that final recommendation for the region and some thoughts on how this could actually be implemented. You can hit the button. We are currently here at task 4, which is the public feedback on the fare concepts. So there's been quite a bit of work done up to this point. Next slide. And part of the reason you're hearing from me is that there have been some leadership changes with the project. So David Galicia, of course, has been involved in this project since the beginning. He's been co-PI on this project. One of my staff, Zach, is no longer with TTI, so I'm trying to help make sure this project continues to transition successfully. And my colleague, Roya Etmanani, also is helping with this particular project. I don't believe anyone has met her yet, but I wanted to just raise that. That's why we're in this sort of transition phase as we go towards the very end of this project, and why I want to make sure that I had the opportunity to brief you on it today. Next slide. Just key findings so far from the study is that cash continues to be quite critical to riders across all the systems. Although sometimes mobile fare payments, like on smartphones, can be an option that helps with regional travel. That might be an option, but things like training might be required, especially for seniors, and not everyone has a bank account or a smartphone in order to enable that kind of fare payment. Generally speaking, any sort of regional fare system probably can't be 100% relying on technology, particular user technology, that users have to have a smartphone or something like that to make it work if the region does do a regional fare system. Based on the initial work, it does appear that riders would value and would want some sort of regional fare structure. That is, a fare structure where it makes regional travel possible in the region. They want to be able to transfer between systems, and ultimately that system should be easy to use, be accessible to on-banked riders, and those that don't have technology should help expand regional mobility and in the end be cost effective. We don't want to implement something that costs so much to implement that it's not really feasible in the end. Next slide. So there's 4 main fare alternatives that came out of the alternatives analysis, which is the prior task. There's a no change alternative, which essentially just keep that original table with everybody with their different fare policies, just keep them all, keep it as is. One option that is an alternative from the study is going 0 fare. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges and ramifications associated with that, particularly for Sun Metro, where fares are a significant portion of the revenue stream. Option 3 is setting up a regional fare structure so that all agencies essentially follow the same fare structure, same rules for fares, and then allowing that sort of free transfers between systems or some sort of discounted transfer between systems. Option 4 is actually setting up a regional fare collection system. This is the most expensive option, where every transit provider essentially uses the same fare collection media and fare boxes and things like that, right? So the whole region uses the same fare collection infrastructure, while of course supporting regional trips, which this is the most complicated, most expensive to implement, but it's option number 4. Next slide, and we're almost done. We're about ready to enter into this public feedback phase where we're asking riders for more information about what fare media they use, how often they take different types of trips between operators or transit agencies, so we have a better feel for, the demand for this kind of regional travel, and also to get some information from riders about their attitudes towards fares and toward potential fare changes, as well as collecting any sort of socio-demographic info to be able to understand rider characteristics that are relevant for that. And this will all be done online. Next slide. The promotion will be done using Sun Metro and El Paso County /EPATS websites. Just through a link. There might even be QR codes or things like that on board buses, and hopefully displayed at Sun Metro transfer centers. And Carl, you might be able to speak more to what that might actually look like than I can accurately. From a timing standpoint, we're hoping to launch the online feedback tool ASAP. We got comments back from Sun Metro and the county on the instrument, and the hope is to leave that instrument up for 2 to 3 weeks. And of course, when it's launched, we'd appreciate promotion to help to get riders and others to take to fill out the tool. Next slide. And the last is to analyze the feedback from that tool, and then ultimately develop that final documentation to be delivered to the study stakeholders about which alternative seems to be the most feasible and what might be the next steps toward implementing a regional fare system or structure in El Paso. And I will stop there and see if you all have any questions.
Interesting. I did take offense to one of your pages there where it says mobile payments an option, but more training may be required, especially seniors. You're taking a portion of our society.
That was as reported by riders themselves, but I take the comment. Thank you.
There's no questions, Michael. Thank you very much. Oh, we do have one.
Yeah, the final development by the end of 2024 seems very, very tight. Is that feasible now, Michael?
So for the documentation of the recommendations from the study, yes, that is still the timeline. Not implementation of the changes, of course, that would take longer. But by the end of the study, the stakeholders of the study will have the results the results and the recommendation from all of the work, as well as some near-term implementation guidance, particularly for how might something like this work, how would agencies potentially share fares if they did enter into an agreement, et cetera. And that will all be done by the end of 2024.
Okay.
Hi, Commissioner, you asked about a discount. We don't have a discount in our system. We've always wanted to mimic how Sun Metro does their discounts. However, we felt like the studies that we have on Passport 10 to implement new routes, new alignments, that was our focus. So this is something that we want to bring back to the board at some point. But also, I think this is something that we always push, or we recommended you guys to see if you approve free rides in the summer. And I think we kind of balanced it out. You know, it's not 100% discount throughout the year, but at least the summer it's still free. And I just wanted to point that out, that we are.
No, thank you. As we move forward, I guess the board will be looking at those, and also the possibility of November 5th, when it's an election time, a big election time, would the board be willing to have free fares just to hopefully get more people on the vote?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Michael, great report. Thank you.
Yep, and I don't want to keep you all very much longer, but I forgot to mention one thing a couple of slides before, if you'll permit me. It's also important to consider this fair discussion in the context of the Route 84 service changes that are coming down the pike. So currently, any rider who's on Route 84 today, is able to transfer to and from that route and Sun Metro transit services, because the Route 84 is operated by Sun Metro. So if Route 84 is discontinued at the end of this year, and only the county routes are left in that region, any rider that currently is using a Sun Metro pass or a Sun Metro transfer will now have to pay to ride both Sun Metro and the county routes, because currently there's no transfer policy between the systems. So I had that on a prior slide. I forgot to mention it. I just wanted to raise that might be a consideration as we enter into the ending months of this study.
And I think that route was averaging about 100 riders a day. So
that'd be something for the board to consider. I think it might be something that would help the riders immensely. Okay, Michael, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well then, we've already covered agenda item 5I and J. So we do not have anything to present under executive session, which is number 6. So that will take us to our last item, which is adjournment.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second that.
We got a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Yeah. 4:30, okay.